In the world of the drug trade, true influence is measured by intelligence, ruthlessness, territorial control, and the ability to survive in a business where one mistake can be fatal. If you love Breaking Bad, please subscribe to my channel. At the very bottom of this hierarchy are those who confuse desperation with ambition, or who believe violence alone can substitute for strategy. On Breaking Bad, Spooge and Combo are the figures who barely register as players in the game. Spooge and his partner represent the lowest tier of the meth trade. Street-level addicts turned dealers whose entire existence revolves around their next hit. When Jesse encounters Spooge, we see the tragic endpoint of someone with zero influence. Spooge robs and schemes not out of strategic thinking, but out of desperation. His death, at the hands of his own partner, killed with an ATM machine, in a moment of drug-fueled chaos, epitomizes his complete lack of control over even his own fate. Combo represents another form of disposable presence. As one of Jesse's street dealers, Combo believed he could expand into rival territory without consequences. His decision to sell on a corner, controlled by rival dealers, was not strategic expansion, but naive overconfidence. The young child who shot him on that corner delivered a harsh lesson. In this business, you are either protected by someone with real power, or you are a target. Combo had neither the intelligence to avoid danger, nor the backing to survive it. His death barely caused a ripple in the larger operation. These figures highlight a fundamental truth about the drug trade. Ambition without protection, intelligence, or strategy is simply suicide on an installment plan. They are not players, they are casualties. Moving up slightly, we find figures who survive in the game but command almost no respect or influence. Badger and Skinny Pete are Jesse's longtime friends and occasional dealers, but their role in the hierarchy is minimal. They are tolerated because of their connection to Jesse, not because of any particular skill or earning power. Badger's most significant contribution to the plot involves getting arrested, forcing Walter and Jesse to hire Saul Goodman. Skinny Pete's dealing operation is small time at best. Both are loyal to Jesse, which gives them a place in the operation, but neither demonstrates the ambition, intelligence, or ruthlessness to climb higher. They are perpetually on the periphery, present but inconsequential. Old Joe occupies a unique position in Level 2. As the junkyard owner who helps dispose of evidence, Joe provides valuable services to Walt and Jesse. However, his influence is strictly transactional. He is a vendor, not a player. His expertise in making problems disappear is valuable, but he has no stake in the operation itself, no crew to command, and no territory to control. He is useful, which keeps him alive, but he will never shape the direction of the trade. These figures represent those who exist within the drug world without truly participating in its power structure. They are helpers, assistants, and minor contractors, but they are not decision makers. Their presence is tolerated, even occasionally valued, but never influential. The middle tier belongs to competent operators who execute orders efficiently but never set policy. Huel Babineau and Patrick Kuby work as Saul Goodman's muscle and fixers. Both are professionals who handle difficult tasks with minimal fuss. Huel's pickpocketing skills and imposing presence make him valuable for specific operations, while Kuby's willingness to handle money laundering and evidence disposal shows competence. However, neither man has authority beyond their assigned tasks. They take orders from Saul, who himself takes orders from Walt. Their influence extends only as far as their immediate assignment. They are tools, albeit skilled ones, in someone else's operation. Tyrus Kit represents the enforcer class at its most competent. As Gus Fring's trusted security chief and right-hand man, Tyrus oversees surveillance, coordinates operations, and handles sensitive problems. His competence is unquestioned. He is methodical, loyal, and professional. Yet Tyrus is never consulted on strategy. He implements Gus's vision, but does not shape it. When Gus dies, Tyrus dies with him, highlighting his complete dependence on his superior's power. These enforcers are the backbone of any drug operation. They are skilled, reliable, and necessary, but their ceiling is clear. They enforce other people's decisions. They are respected for their competence, but never for their vision, because they have none to offer. Jesse Pinkman occupies a complex position in the hierarchy. Early in the series, Jesse is a small-time dealer with minimal influence. His value comes entirely from his partnership with Walter White and access to the superior product Walt produces. Throughout the series, Jesse's influence fluctuates based on his relationship with Walt. Jesse demonstrates moments of strategic thinking and moral complexity that suggest potential for growth, but his emotional nature and drug use consistently undermine his effectiveness. He is too valuable to the operation to be disposable, yet too unreliable to be truly trusted with high-level decisions. His influence is derivative. He matters because of who he knows and what he can cook, not because of his own power base. Todd Alquist represents cold ambition without emotional weakness. After proving himself willing to kill a child without hesitation, Todd rises quickly in the organization. His uncle's connections to white supremacist gangs give him access to muscle and infrastructure. Todd's methodical approach and willingness to do anything make him dangerous. Yet Todd's influence is limited by his lack of creativity and his subordinate position. He follows orders efficiently, whether from Walt, Lydia, or his Uncle Jack. His power is borrowed from these associations. He is a useful operator in someone else's game, never the architect of his own. Crazy 8, despite his early death in the series, represents an established mid-level dealer with his own territory and connections. As a distributor with ties to larger operations, Crazy 8 had built a sustainable business before encountering Walt and Jesse. His influence within his sphere was real, he knew the right people, and controlled his corners effectively. However, his ultimate role as a DEA informant reveals his vulnerability. He lacked the power to protect himself from either the law or rivals. These level 4 figures are more than enforcers, but less than true power players. They have agency and make decisions that affect operations, but their influence is bounded by more powerful figures above them. They are significant pieces on the board, but they don't control the game. Tuco Salamanca represents raw, violent power without discipline. As a high-level distributor with connections to the Mexican cartel, Tuco controlled significant territory and commanded respect through fear. His willingness to kill anyone, including his own associates, made him unpredictable and therefore dangerous. Tuco's operation had scale, he could move large quantities of product, and had the muscle to protect his territory. However, Tuco's influence was undermined by his own instability. His meth addiction and explosive temper made him unreliable. Associates feared him, but also sought to escape him. Walt and Jesse's relationship with Tuco nearly killed them multiple times. Tuco's violent death at the hands of Hank Schrader demonstrated that brute force without strategic thinking has a limited shelf life in this business. The cousins, Marco and Lionel Salamanca, represent the cartel's enforcement arm. As professional assassins, they commanded fear and respect throughout the Southwest. Their reputation alone was enough to clear rooms. Their methodical, almost ritualistic approach to killing made them legendary. Yet the cousins were ultimately tools of the cartel, not independent operators. They followed orders from the Juarez cartel leadership and were deployed as weapons, not strategists. Their influence came from their lethality, but they had no business operation of their own. When Gus maneuvered them into a confrontation with Hank, their lack of political acumen left them vulnerable. They were dangerous, but not untouchable. Declan represents the professional distributor operating at scale. As the head of a large distribution operation in Arizona, Declan controlled significant territory and moved massive quantities of product. His operation was professional, well-organized, and profitable. When Walt approached him, Declan had the confidence to negotiate as an equal, showing his genuine power base. However, Declan's influence was regional and ultimately vulnerable to larger forces. His refusal to continue paying tribute to Walt led to his downfall. Jack's gang massacred Declan and his entire crew in minutes, demonstrating that even established distributors can be swept aside by more ruthless operators. Declan had built something substantial, but he lacked the protection and political connections to survive challenges from unexpected quarters. Level 5 figures control significant operations and command real respect. They have territories, crews, and established business relationships. Yet they remain vulnerable to larger forces and more strategic thinkers. They are regional powers, important within their sphere, but ultimately subordinate to those who control the broader game. Saul Goodman represents a unique form of influence in the drug trade, the fixer who makes operations possible. As a criminal lawyer with connections throughout Albuquerque's underworld, Saul provides essential services that allow others to operate. He launders money, coordinates deals, connects buyers with sellers, and most importantly, keeps people out of prison. Saul's influence comes from his knowledge and connections. He knows everyone who matters in the criminal world and can solve problems that pure violence cannot address. While Saul never commands crews or controls territory, his position as the essential middleman gives him significant leverage. Walt and Jesse's operation would have collapsed multiple times without Saul's interventions. Yet Saul's power is fundamentally dependent. He serves the actual operators and takes his cut.
We're done when I say we're done.
But he doesn't set policy or control the product. His influence is real, but circumscribed. He is invaluable, which protects him, but he is never in charge. Mike Ehrmantraut represents the consummate professional. As a former Philadelphia cop turned cartel enforcer, Mike brought discipline, intelligence, and strategic thinking to his work. His reputation was impeccable. When Mike took a job, it got done right. His role as Gus Fring's head of security gave him significant authority over operations. Mike's influence extended beyond mere enforcement. Gus trusted Mike's judgment on strategic matters, and Mike often served as a voice of caution and planning. After Gus's death, Mike briefly ran his own operation, demonstrating his capacity for independent action. His experience and connections made him valuable to multiple organizations. Yet Mike's influence had limits. He was never the boss, never the one setting the overall strategy. His role was to execute the vision of others, albeit with significant autonomy. Mike's ultimate fate, killed by Walt in a moment of rage, showed that even the most competent professional remains vulnerable to the whims of those with greater power. These level 6 figures represent different paths to influence: legal expertise, strategic connections, and professional competence. They are indispensable to the operations they serve, and their opinions carry weight. They shape how the business operates even if they don't control its overall direction. They are one step below the summit, powerful enough to be essential, but not powerful enough to be untouchable. At the pinnacle of power in Breaking Bad's universe sit those who don't just participate in the drug trade, but who reshape it according to their vision. These are the architects of empires, the figures whose decisions affect entire regions, and whose influence extends across international borders. Gustavo Fring represents the ideal of the modern drug lord, a businessman who happens to trade in narcotics. As the owner of Los Palos Hermanos and the head of a vast distribution network spanning from Mexico to Europe, Gus built an empire that appeared completely legitimate on the surface, while generating hundreds of millions of dollars in drug profits beneath. Gus's influence was absolute within his territory. He commanded loyalty through a combination of fear and respect, maintained relationships with the highest levels of the Mexican cartel, and had law enforcement connections that protected his operation. His methodical approach to business, his emphasis on professionalism, and his long-term strategic thinking made him nearly untouchable. Gus's power extended beyond mere drug distribution. He shaped the entire structure of the trade in the Southwest, determining who could operate and under what terms. His decision to eliminate the competition was not executed through violence alone, but through superior business strategy. His partnership with Madrigal gave him international reach that most dealers could never imagine. Yet Gus's influence, vast as it was, faced limits. His personal vendetta against the cartel, rooted in the murder of his partner Max, drove him to take risks that eventually proved fatal. His inability to control Walter White, his refusal to see Walt as a genuine threat until too late, represented a rare blind spot. When the bomb exploded at the Casa Tranquila nursing home, it erased decades of careful empire building in an instant. The Juarez cartel leadership, represented by Don Eladio and his lieutenants, controlled the drug trade across vast swaths of Mexico and the American Southwest. Their influence dwarfed even Gus's in terms of raw scale and reach. The cartel's decisions affected thousands of people and generated billions of dollars. They were the closest thing to royalty in the drug world. However, the cartel's influence was rooted in traditional power structures that proved vulnerable to strategic thinking. Their assumption of superiority and their reliance on fear and tradition made them predictable. When Gus poisoned Don Eladio and his entire inner circle, he demonstrated that even the mightiest empire can fall to a single strategic stroke. Walter White represents the ultimate disruption of the established order. Beginning as a high school chemistry teacher with terminal cancer, Walt transformed himself into Heisenberg, one of the most powerful drug manufacturers in American history.
I'm in the empire business.
His product was so pure that it created its own demand, and his ruthless elimination of rivals established his dominance. Walt's influence at his peak was staggering. He built an empire worth tens of millions of dollars, controlled production and distribution across multiple states, and eliminated everyone who threatened him, from street dealers to cartel leaders to rival manufacturers. His name alone became currency. Heisenberg was feared and respected throughout the drug world. What made Walt unique was his transformation of the hierarchy itself. He proved that intelligence and chemistry could triumph over experience and traditional power structures. He eliminated Gus Fring, the untouchable businessman. He built an empire from nothing, through pure strategic thinking and a willingness to do whatever was necessary. Yet Walt's influence was also his prison. His ego demanded recognition, his pride prevented compromise, and his need to be the boss destroyed his family and ultimately himself. His empire collapsed not because he lacked power, but because his personality made that empire unsustainable. In the end, Walt controlled everything and lost everything, demonstrating that absolute power in this world comes with absolute consequences. These level 7 figures represent the pinnacle of influence in the drug trade. They built empires, controlled territories, and shaped the business itself. Their decisions affected thousands of lives and generated fortunes beyond most people's imagination. They were not merely participants in the game, they were the ones who defined what game was being played. The hierarchy of Breaking Bad reveals a fundamental truth. Power in the drug trade is not static. Unlike traditional organized crime with its established rules and positions, the methamphetamine business rewards innovation, ruthlessness, and strategic thinking above all else. Walt's rise from zero to the top demonstrates that in this world, anyone with sufficient intelligence and willingness to break bad can reshape the entire structure. But the hierarchy also reveals power's fragility. Gus's empire, built over decades, fell in one explosive moment. Walt's dominance, achieved through brilliance and brutality, lasted barely 2 years before destroying everything he claimed to be protecting. In the drug trade, influence is measured not by titles or tradition, but by the ability to survive. And in Breaking Bad's universe, almost no one survives unchanged.